The foe mothership drifted silently into Earth's orbit, hidden by its advanced cloaking technology. Inside the ship, a group of high-ranking officers gathered around a holographic display. Their silver-skinned faces, elongated and emotionless, reflected the cold and calculated approach of their race. At the center stood Commander Zra, eyes fixed on the rotating image of Earth. To them, this was just another world to conquer, a mere primitive backwater planet that would soon fall before their superior might. The room buzzed with an air of superiority. Earth, they believed, was insignificant, a minor obstacle in their grand plan for galactic domination. The Viral Empire, a race built on military prowess, had seen countless worlds fall. Each conquest was swift, efficient, and absolute. Commander Zrai and his officers viewed humanity as no different, a simple species ripe for harvesting. "We begin our descent in an hour," Zra declared, his voice void of emotion. "Our victory will be swift. Humans will crumble under our feet." The invasion commenced. Their dropships tore through Earth's atmosphere, targeting major cities across the globe. The Viral expected fear, chaos, and swift surrender. Instead, they encountered something far more resilient. The Viral forces, though shaken by the initial resistance from the humans, continued to believe that they could easily subdue the primitive species. Their strategy shifted from brute force to more methodical and calculated precision. The plan was simple: regroup, analyze, and adapt. However, they still underestimated the sheer unpredictability of human ingenuity and resilience. As the Viral ships hovered above Earth, the command center on the mothership buzzed with activity. Commander Zray paced in front of a massive holographic map of Earth, his silver-skinned face tight with frustration. Reports from the ground units had been disappointing, to say the least. What was supposed to be a swift and decisive conquest had turned into a chaotic mess of skirmishes, ambushes, and unanticipated human resistance. Despite their advanced technology, the Viral found themselves struggling against a species that fought with an unpredictable ferocity. "How are we being thwarted by such primitive beings?" Zra demanded, his voice cold but laced with irritation. His subordinates remained silent, knowing better than to challenge the commander when he was in such a state. They had seen his wrath before. One of the scientists, a tall, gangly figure with a mind honed by centuries of study, stepped forward hesitantly. "Commander, it appears that the humans are not as primitive as we initially believed. Their tactics, they're unconventional. They're using the environment to their advantage in ways we did not anticipate." Zra turned, his eyes narrowing. "Explain." The scientist gestured toward the holographic display, zooming in on various battle zones around the planet. In urban areas, they're using guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and then disappearing into the labyrinth of their cities. Our soldiers, trained for large-scale warfare, are struggling to adapt. In rural regions, the terrain is being used against us. They know the land better than we do, and they're exploiting that knowledge. Zra's frown deepened. "So you're telling me we're being bested by a group of savages with outdated technology because they know how to hide in the trees and buildings?" The scientist flinched but held his ground. "It's more than that, Commander. Their determination is remarkable. They fight not just with weapons, but with a deep-seated will to protect their world. It's something we haven't encountered before, at least not on this scale." Zra waved his hand dismissively. "Willpower, sentiment, these are weaknesses, not strengths. We will crush them as we have crushed every other species that has dared to resist us." The scientist bowed his head, not daring to argue further. The Viral had always believed that emotion was a flaw, a distraction from pure logic and efficiency. But something about these humans was different, something that could not be easily quantified or understood. On the surface, the battle continued to rage, though now the humans were no longer fighting in desperation. They were fighting with strategy. Military commanders around the world had quickly adapted to the Viral's technology, using stolen enemy equipment, reverse engineering alien tech, and applying centuries of human warfare tactics, they found ways to fight back that surprised even the most seasoned Veral soldiers. In the mountains of Afghanistan, a small human force, armed with outdated rifles and explosives, managed to take down an entire Veral outpost. The humans used the rugged terrain to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes that left the alien soldiers disoriented and vulnerable. The Veral, unused to such unpredictable and disorganized warfare, were caught off guard. Meanwhile, in the dense jungles of the Amazon, the Veral's cloaked teams encountered resistance from local tribes, who, while technologically primitive, used the dense foliage and their intimate knowledge of the environment to launch devastating hit-and-run attacks. The Veral's cloaking devices proved useless against the humans' keen senses and their ability to blend into the environment. In the cities, human forces took advantage of the labyrinthine streets and towering buildings to wage urban warfare. Snipers hid in high-rise windows, picking off Veral soldiers one by one, while guerrilla fighters set traps and detonated explosives that turned once peaceful neighborhoods into deadly war zones. The Veral, used to open battlefields and direct confrontations, found themselves out of their element. The battles became more than just clashes of weapons. They were battles of wits. Humans, with their centuries of experience in warfare, adapted quickly to the Veral's strengths and exploited their weaknesses. Every time the Veral thought they had the upper hand, the humans would surprise them with a new tactic or a new strategy, something the aliens had never encountered before. Back on the Veral mothership, the command center was in chaos. Reports of human victories were coming in from all over the planet. What was supposed to be a quick and decisive conquest had turned into a drawn-out conflict, one that the Veral were not prepared for. Commander Zres slammed his fist onto the control panel, causing a ripple of fear to pass through his subordinates. "This is unacceptable," he roared. "We are the Veral. We do not lose." One of his generals, a seasoned warrior who had led countless campaigns, stepped forward cautiously. "Commander, perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach. The humans, they are not like the others we've conquered. Their unpredictability is proving to be a greater challenge than we anticipated." Zra turned on the general, his eyes blazing with anger. "Are you suggesting we retreat? That we admit defeat to these animals?" The general shook his head quickly. "No, Commander. But perhaps we need to learn more about them before we proceed. We underestimated them once. We cannot afford to do so again." Zra stared at the general for a long moment, his mind racing. He hated the idea of slowing down their invasion, of giving the humans any more time to regroup and strengthen their defenses. But he also knew that continuing on their current path would lead to more losses. The humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also cunning. They had proven that time and time again in just the short time the Veral had been on their planet. Finally, Zra nodded. "Very well. We will adapt. We will learn their weaknesses, and we will use them against them. Deploy the cover teams. Capture human subjects. I want to know what makes them so resilient." The order was given, and the Veral began their next phase of the invasion, one of covert observation and targeted abductions. Elite squads, equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology, were sent to various regions of Earth with one mission: capture humans, study them, and find their weaknesses. But as the Veral would soon discover, even their most advanced technology could not fully prepare them for the determination and unpredictability of the human spirit. As the Veral began their covert operations, strange disappearances were reported across the globe. People from all walks of life, soldiers, civilians, the young, the old, were vanishing without a trace. At first, the disappearances were sporadic, isolated incidents that barely made the news. But as more and more people went missing, governments and military forces around the world began to take notice. What the Veral hadn't counted on was humanity's response to these disappearances. Instead of succumbing to fear, humans banded together. Communities formed watch groups, governments increased surveillance, and military forces began hunting for any trace of the alien abductors. Even in the face of an invisible enemy, humanity refused to back down. In a small town in the Midwest, a group of ordinary citizens, armed with nothing more than baseball bats and hunting rifles, managed to fight off a feral cloaking team. They couldn't see the aliens, but they could hear them. They could feel the subtle shifts in the air, the strange vibrations that accompanied the Veral's cloaked movements. And using their instincts, their wits, and their determination, they'd managed to drive the Veral away. The Veral, once again, were left baffled. How could a species so technologically inferior continue to thwart them? How could a group of untrained civilians fight off their elite soldiers? The answer, as the Veral would soon learn, was something far more dangerous than any weapon or technology. It was something that no amount of study or observation could ever fully understand. It was the human spirit, the unbreakable will to survive, to fight, and to protect what was theirs. The Veral had come to conquer, but they had underestimated the one thing that no conqueror could ever truly defeat. And as the conflict dragged on, it became clear that this war would not be won by weapons or technology alone. It would be won by those who could endure, who could adapt, and who could outthink their enemy. In the end, it would be a battle not just for control of a planet, but for the very future of two civilizations. The Veral command was at a crossroads. What was meant to be a clean sweep had devolved into a tangled conflict that left the aliens both frustrated and mystified. Their cloaking teams, meant to operate undetected, were proving ineffective in many areas. Every time they tried to abduct more humans, they met fierce resistance, sometimes from professional soldiers, but just as often from ordinary civilians. In some cases, entire squads were wiped out, never reporting back to the mothership. Zra, though reluctant to admit it, was beginning to sense the depth of their miscalculation. Humans, despite their relatively primitive technology, had become an enigma, one that he needed to solve. In response to the escalating conflict, Veral scientists were dispatched to the surface, tasked with understanding the humans' uncanny ability to resist. They began quietly observing battlefields, capturing small groups of fighters, and studying them in secret. But no matter how much they learned about human biology, tactics, or even emotions, nothing fully explained how these people, these creatures, could persist under such impossible conditions. Meanwhile, Earth's population had fully mobilized. Governments across the globe declared a state of emergency, uniting in a way no one had thought possible. Old rivalries between nations were set aside as humanity faced the alien threat head-on. Military leaders, scientists, and political officials from every corner of the planet came together to form a global defense initiative. What shocked the Veral even more was the speed at which humans adapted. Within weeks of the invasion's beginning, human engineers had started to reverse engineer captured Veral technology. Devices once foreign and incomprehensible were quickly repurposed for human use. Fields of study like quantum physics and gravitation that had long been theoretical were suddenly thrust into rapid, practical application. A sense of unity and purpose swept through the planet, empowering even the most cynical to stand shoulder to shoulder with their fellow humans. In hidden laboratories deep underground and in covert research stations orbiting Earth, human scientists worked tirelessly to crack the code of Veral technology. Some breakthroughs were astonishing. Veral shielding technology, once thought impenetrable, was bypassed by hacking systems that repurposed human computer viruses to disrupt the alien networks. Veral energy weapons were understood in terms of electromagnetic fields, and soon, Earth's engineers had developed rudimentary counters. But it wasn't just technology that humans turned to. Their greatest strength lay in their ability to work together, to combine their creativity and willpower. Across the globe, scientists from diverse fields shared knowledge and resources. Weapons specialists collaborated with biologists, military strategists with historians, and even philosophers joined in the conversation, contributing insights into how the Veral might think and what they feared. On the Veral mothership, Commander Zray was growing increasingly impatient. His generals argued amongst themselves, each proposing new strategies for subduing the humans. One suggested an all-out bombardment of Earth's major cities, reducing them to ash and ending the conflict through sheer destruction. Another pushed for a more surgical approach, targeting key leaders and military installations in the hopes of breaking the humans' morale. But Zhra knew neither plan would work. Destroying Earth's cities wouldn't guarantee victory, not when the humans had already proven themselves capable of fighting from anywhere, using even rubble and wilderness to their advantage. And killing a few leaders wouldn't break a species that seemed to thrive on chaos, where individual resilience and decentralized resistance were part of their very nature. What we need, Zhra said coldly, addressing his command staff, is an understanding of how they think. What drives them to fight as they do? Why do they persist when they should have surrendered? He gestured toward the holographic map of Earth, now marked with red spots denoting failed missions, downed Veral ships, and areas where human resistance had thwarted their forces. The humans aren't just fighting to survive, he continued. They're fighting for something more. But what? His question lingered in the air. No one dared to speak. Back on Earth, the Veral's hesitation gave humanity a rare opportunity to consolidate its resources. Underground resistance movements blossomed, and every continent had its own version of local militia groups taking up arms against the alien invaders. The human spirit, in its diversity, was the greatest weapon Earth had to offer. In Europe, where old cities had seen war before, people took to the streets with an iron will. Veterans of wars past stood shoulder to shoulder with teenagers and young adults, some of whom had never before held a weapon, but learned quickly. The streets of Paris, Rome, and Berlin became battlegrounds of ingenuity. Improvised explosive devices were crafted from household goods, and former artists now painted the walls with warnings and messages of hope, inspiring those who fought on the front lines. In the United States, military bases hummed with activity. Recruits were trained around the clock, learning to handle both human and alien technology. But even more importantly, civilian engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to integrate Veral tech into human designs. One such breakthrough came when a team of aerospace engineers in California figured out how to adapt Veral gravity drives to human aircraft, creating the first human-piloted ships capable of entering low orbit and engaging Veral fighters on more equal footing. In Asia, where dense urban environments proved ideal for guerrilla warfare, cities became fortresses. Shanghai, Tokyo, and Seoul were lit up with resistance networks that stretched across entire regions. While their governments and militaries held the line in more direct confrontations, civilian hackers, armed with laptops and augmented reality glasses, waged digital war against Veral systems, causing chaos in their ranks. Power grids in the Veral camps flickered and died. Cloaking shields blinked on and off as though possessed by some invisible ghost. The humans were inside their systems, inside their minds, and it was beginning to show. The Veral soldiers, who had once been calm, methodical, and certain of their superiority, now faced an opponent that was in their heads, always one step ahead, always adapting faster than they could account for. For the first time in millennia, the Veral felt something they had never expected to feel: fear. Among the human forces, whispers of counteroffensive plans began to circulate. It wasn't enough to defend Earth, they realized. They needed to push back, to take the fight to the Veral. But how? The answer came from an unexpected place: outer space. In the early days of the invasion, the Veral had assumed Earth's fledgling space programs were of no consequence, but they hadn't counted on humanity's ability to think outside the box. Scientists and engineers from NASA, the European Space Agency, and Russia's Roscosmos, along with private companies that had once been competitors, now pooled their resources and talents. The result was something none of the Veral had expected: a fleet of retrofitted human spacecraft, equipped with a hybrid of human and Veral technology, launched from Earth's surface. These ships were crewed by Veral standards, but they were deadly, armed with railguns, energy disruptors, and explosives that could penetrate the shields of even the largest Veral ships. These human vessels represented a new phase of the war, The first major space battle between humans and Varel took place near the moon. The Varel, confident in their superiority, sent a modest fleet to engage what they assumed would be a minor skirmish. They were wrong. The human ships, though outnumbered, fought with the same unpredictable ingenuity that had defined Earth's ground battles. They used the moon's gravitational field to slingshot around, attacking the Varel from unexpected angles. They exploited weaknesses in the Varel's formation, breaking through lines of defense that should have been impenetrable. For the first time in the conflict, humanity struck back in space, and they won. Back on Earth, the news of the space victory spread like wildfire. Morale, already high among the human forces, skyrocketed. Across the globe, people took to the streets in celebration, even as battles continued to rage in some areas. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. They were taking the fight to the enemy. In underground bunkers and hidden command centers, human leaders gathered to discuss the next phase of the war. It was time to strike at the heart of the Varel. No longer content with mere defense, they began planning an operation that would take them beyond Earth, into Varel territory. It was a bold, nearly unthinkable idea, but the humans had already proven time and time again that they could accomplish the impossible. And now, with Varel technology in their hands and a united planet at their backs, they were ready to go even further. The Varel had come to conquer Earth, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson. Humanity wasn't just defending its home anymore. Humanity was preparing to invade the stars.